Within general gaming discourse, it's pretty common to see people complaining about game studios ignoring the existence of specific franchises or games. But I've always been interested when a character starts being ignored. You know, when a game introduces someone, they play a fairly important role, can even build up a decently sized fanbase, and yet despite all of that, by the next entry, they're just completely gone with zero mention as to where they went. Now, usually this can happen for a multitude of reasons. Maybe the character wasn't that popular with the creators, the writers have no idea what to actually do with them after their debut, or maybe there's some weird real-world issue, ranging from issues with the character's voice actor, or maybe even just some weird licensing issues. However, I don't think it'd be reasonable to say that any of these cases could be seen as a malicious intent to erase the character. They just got stuck in a scenario where it's hard for the people responsible to justify bringing them back. But there is at least one case of a company actively going out of its way to delete any records of a character's existence, all the while refusing to explain why they would go that far. The character in question being K49 from SNK's The King of Fighters. To start our story, let's give some quick context as to where KOF was prior to K49's appearance. By this point, SNK's flagship crossover fighter was nearing the end of its second story arc with the Nest saga, which sees a criminal syndicate called Nest attempting to take over the world by creating an army of unstoppable fighters. Their initial plan of doing this being to create a clone army using the DNA of Kyo Kusanagi, the main protagonist of the previous storyline, with the most notable of the thousands of Kyo clones being K-Dash, the first clone who serves as the arc's main protagonist, defeating the ultimate Kyo clone Chrysalid in KOF 99, as well as high-ranking Nest member Zero, later retconned to be a clone of Zero in KOF 2000, during the latter of which he also encounters Cooler Diamond, a teenage girl that was experimented on by Nests in order to destroy K-Dash for betraying them, with her ultimately being the one who destroys the Zero cannon after Zero betrayed the organization to build the aforementioned weapon. For KOF 2001, the titular King of Fighters tournament for that year ends up being held by Nests, resulting in K-Dash entering as he sees it as an opportunity to finally bring an end to the cartel once and for all. As part of the tournament, Nests enter their own team in order to capture him, which in addition to featuring Cooler and our handler Foxy from the previous game, also includes our character of interest, K49, named such due to him being the 9,999th Kyo clone, alongside his handler, Angel. Now that we have the story context, how about we get to learn a little more about K49? The final clone of Kyo is completely psychotic, threatening violence against anyone who angers him, including his own teammates, having no issue taking heavy damage if it means he gets to kill his opponent, and holding a bitter hatred for everyone surrounding him, especially K-Dash, with the only person he views as a friend being his handler, Angel. In addition to carrying over Kyo's pyrokinesis powers, K49 also possesses the ability to create a psychic barrier around him and can transform one of his arms into various weapons, such as a drill, a gun, or a giant homunculus blob. By the end of the story, both he and Angel try to kill Foxy per request of the organization, but the pair end up having to escape when K-Dash arrives to save Cooler. After this, K49 would appear again as part of the non-canonical Dream Match entry, KOF 2002, but otherwise would be completely absent from following entries, not showing up at all during the next storyline with the Ash Saga, which lasted from KOF 2003 up to KOF 13 in 2010. Now, if that's where things ended, there wouldn't really be much to discuss. Just another case of a decently popular character not showing up again, most likely due to the writers not knowing where to go with him after his debut. However, something odd started to happen in relation to K49 in the following years. When the King of Fighters 2002 was remade in 2009 as KOF 2002 Unlimited Match, near enough every character in the games previous to it were brought back, with the sole exception of K49. Instead, in his place was the brand new character Nameless, who in addition to having a very similar moveset, had a backstory that was near identical identical to K49. This is already pretty strange, but in the time afterwards, K49's character portrait was removed from the KOF website. In the manga adaptation of KOF 14, events were retconned to remove him from the Nest saga, with the in-game gallery for KOF 14 editing all artwork that featured K49 to erase him, with similar edits being done to the KOF character portal, which doesn't even mention him once. And in the KOF character encyclopedia, a book which featured every character in the series up to KOF 13, regardless of how minor they were in importance, he was the only one whose artwork was completely censored with a black silhouette. From every angle, it looked like SNK were going out of their way to completely erase any and all references to K49's existence, none of which were helped anytime staff were asked what was going on, always giving roundabout answers that suggested for some unclear reason they weren't even allowed to even mention him, with even the Twitter account for a KOF mobile game having to play coy when fans asked if he would ever be added to it. With all this confusion going around, multiple theories would pop up as to his sudden erasure from the series. For a while, the most popular of these was that there was some kind of legal issue preventing him from appearing. Now, if after seeing K49 and his moveset, if you don't get what kind of legal issues I could be referring to, you're probably not too familiar with classic 80s anime, as he is very blatantly modeled after Tetsuo Shima, the main antagonist of the manga and animated film Akira. Now, this isn't too surprising, as a lot of SNK characters have taken inspiration from other media. Some of the more famous examples being KOF's own Benimaru, who's modeled after the character Polnareff from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or Art of Fighting's Ryo Sakazaki, who was such a blatant ripoff of Ryu, it directly inspired the creation of gaming's most famous joke character. However, K49 was arguably a bit more than a small reference, as on top of his designs and moves being based on Tetsuo, all of those aforementioned moves are named after quotes from the movie. On top of that, he also shares Tetsuo's voice actor of Nozomu Sasaki, and in KOF 2002, he has special dialogue with fellow Kyo clone Kusanagi, who shares his voice actor with Shotaro Kaneda, the main protagonist of Akira. Based on all of this, it's fair to say that K49 was less of an homage and more just direct plagiarism, giving either the series creator Katsuhiro Otomo, the company responsible for distributing the movie Toho, or frankly anyone else involved with Akira's creation more than enough ammo to sue SNK into oblivion. This belief would be backed up by a developer story which seemed to imply they weren't allowed to talk about or include him in games despite his strong fanbase because of him being too similar to Tetsuo. However, in 2015, SNK artist Falcon would mention that K49, quote, wasn't removed for the reasons you think, which along with the fact he would still make a handful of very small cameos, as well as SNK having no problems re-releasing KOF 2001 and 2002 with him still in it, suggests that it couldn't have been a legal problem, or at the very least, if it was nowhere near bad enough for such a reaction. Another popular theory was the much more basic explanation of SNK just hating the character, either due to how one originally was, or SNK just not liking to remember this era due to it being made when they were going through a lot of shit that ultimately led to their first bankruptcy. However, this explanation doesn't quite work either, as on top of the fact that a lot of other characters from this era still make frequent appearances, most notably Angel, who debuted in the exact same game as K49, does it sound remotely realistic that a character could be hated so much by every single person working at a company that they would unanimously agree to never mention him and erase anything that would suggest he existed, while still being perfectly happy re-releasing the games he was in with no issues? Yeah, it sounds really fucking stupid when I say it that way. All of this would come to a head with the release of KOF 15, as one of the teams for the game consisted of the returning Cooler Diamond and Angel, and the brand new character, Cronin McDougal. And after looking at him for a whopping 2 seconds, everyone immediately picked up that Cronin is K49, just with a different name and a new design which removed most of the Akira influences, with any debate on whether this was the character's return being unambiguously answered in the team's arcade ending, where they confirm Cronin is just a new identity taken by K49 following the events of the Nest saga. If you're absolutely baffled by what's going on right now, some light can be shed on this by SNK's community manager, Crispy Kaiser, who shortly after Cronin's reveal commented in the SNK Discord server that he had to keep the lie going for years. This would suggest that there were no issues with K49. SNK just artificially created this giant mystery that there was some hidden reason as to why they couldn't use the character anymore, and erased any and all mentions of him, causing years of skepticism and investigations by fans trying to figure out what was going on, all of it just being a publicity stunt to build up hype for when they eventually brought him back. That is actually genius and one of the many reasons SNK are goated. Name someone else who would actively gaslight their fanbase into thinking they couldn't use a character for no reason. So, if there's anything to take from this, it's that no one is truly gone forever. If a character can make an impact and leave a strong impression on people, there's always a chance for them to come back. And whilst it may not be in a way you would have expected, everyone can get a second shot. Unless you're Team American Sports.